Alright, welcome everybody to Brooks Falls and Katmai National Park and Preserve. My name is David Kopshever. I'm a ranger here at the park. For the next hour or so, I'm going to be on the live bear cam here, sharing my thoughts about what we're seeing, what bear action we're seeing, give you a little information about which bears we're seeing, what they're doing, and why. So hang out for the next hour. If you have any questions about what you're watching, head on over to explore.org if you're watching on Facebook Live, and enter your questions into the comments section below the video feed. I'll do my best to answer as many as I can, though I will not be able to answer questions from Facebook Live. If you're not sure what explore.org is, if you're watching on Facebook or on another platform, Explore is a non-profit organization that brings wild places and wild animals to your home via the internet. So some of the most amazing places in the world, Explore.org has set up webcams that stream live 24/7, and you're able to experience those places through those cams. And so we call this this kind of setup here at Katmai, with me talking on the mic and pointing the camera at the bears here. We call this a play-by-play. If you're not familiar with that setup, basically it's kind of like sports commentating, sports narration, except for bears. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show with me here. If I stop talking for any point in time, it doesn't necessarily mean that we've lost audio. I'm just kind of also enjoying the show here with you. And so again, if you're new to the bear cams or new to Katmai, Brooks Camp is one of the more popular destinations for visitors to come into Katmai National Park. And we have these viewing platforms set up along the river where people can come and watch wild brown bears fish for sockeye salmon. Katmai is located at the base of the Alaskan Peninsula, and it's home to about 2,000 brown bears spread out over 4 million acres. About 60 or so of those brown bears use the Brooks River that we know of. And each bear that we see come back year after year and utilize this resource, we've given a number to try to monitor and track their behavior, their movements, kind of their life histories. And so we're able to get this really unique look into the lives of these wild animals and see what they've been through throughout their life, what their experience is, and get a look into some of the individual behaviors that they show us. And from that we can learn a lot about brown bears as a species. And so some of the bears we're looking at here, right in front of us, who just caught a fish, is one of the more popular bears on the river here. Number's 480, and he's got a nickname of Otis. He's kind of a real steady bear. He uses the river probably more than any other bear I've ever seen. He seems to be here almost day and night, catching salmon after salmon, packing on weight for the wintertime. And below 480, a little bit lower down in the river, below the falls, is bear 273. 273 is another one of our more popular bears that use the river here. Up until recently, she kind of flew under the radar for a lot of viewers, until 2 years ago when she had her first litter, which is one cub she raised. Up until this year, she returned without it. 2.5 years old. Cubs are generally emancipated from their mothers. Their mother goes back goes into estrus and is ready to mate with other males, and at that time they either drive their cub away, or a male will come by, drive the cub away, or the cub may just take off on its own. And so among cam viewers that have been watching for a number of years and kind of gotten to know some of these bears, 273's cub's been very popular, and a lot of people want to know, have we seen them? One of the tricky things is, you know, subadults are so difficult to recognize, both year to year and throughout the year. They just change so much as they continue to grow. So I think if anyone's gonna give a positive ID to 273's emancipated cub, it's probably going to be one of the viewers that have been watching for a number of years and really gotten to know them. If you're wondering how people can identify bears as individuals, people are going to have a little bit of help. There's the Bear Identification Book, Bear ebook, and you can find that as a free download. There's a link to it at the top of the chat box, and it's got photos and descriptions of all the most commonly seen bears on the river. So you can check that out to give you a hand with some of your identifications. And it helps you, follow these bears' lives and learn from them, learn their stories, and be inspired by kind of what they've been through and what they're doing now. So 273, the bear that's a little bit farther away now, is about 10 and a half years old. So brown bears will live from 20 to 30 years. So she's still a young adult. And after, likely emancipating her cub this year, it'll be interesting to see if she's able to put on enough weight this year or next year to raise another litter. Brown bears don't have a very high, they have a very high mortality rate. Just about 33% of all brown bear cubs that use Brooks River, 33% make it into their adult years. So it's really a massive success anytime a litter of cubs or one cub is raised to adulthood, especially by a brown bear who's doing it for the first time, a first-time mother brown bear. .273 here is also proven herself to be a very playful bear, a very energetic bear. Oftentimes, last year with her cubs, she would spend a lot of time in Brooks Camp, in areas where people frequent, and we think, we can only speculate. We don't know what's going on inside her head, but we can only speculate that she did that to kind of protect her cub, to keep it away from larger adult male bears that might pose a threat to it. But we would often see her playing with her cub, roughhousing, sometimes even nursing very close to some of the viewing platforms downriver near kind of Brooks Camp proper, where some of our facilities are. And so over the last 2 years, we've really kind of gotten to know this sow and watch her and kind of be inspired by her energetic nature and curiosity and desire to explore. And downriver in the riffles here, there are several other bears. Closest to us in the middle, the darker bear, is bear 151, nicknamed Walker. He's another younger adult. This is a male bear, about 10 and a half years old, and also really quite playful. We've seen him play with other subadults and other young adult bears quite often. and also a bear that spends a lot of time at the falls. All bears have kind of different fishing techniques, different desired locations, and different rates of success. 151 is bear 477, nicknamed Sarah. This is a bear that doesn't use the river very predictably. Some years she comes in fall, some years she comes in summer, some years she doesn't come at all. This year she's been using it really very consistently, at least in the last week or so. Fishing the riffles, making her way up towards the falls, but not very often fishing directly at the falls. The riffles area is a great place for bears who are not the most dominant on the river, bears who aren't willing to risk getting in those real prime fishing locations at the falls. And they're able to use the area just below, and it's also very productive. They're able to balance the need for safety and a need to fatten up for the wintertime. There's about 6 or 7 months here in Katmai where there is no food available for these bears. And so of course that's when they're hibernating, living off all the fat that they stored in the previous 5 or 6 months. Once again, down at the riffles here, we've got bear 151, 477 just took off into the trees. And there are 2 more bears down there that I can't quite get a good look at just yet. If they come up our way, we'll point the camera down back at them and see what we can see. Just to recap at the falls here, we've got 480 Otis fishing near the jacuzzi, and 273 fishing near the down tree on the far end. And 273, not a bear that we saw at the falls a whole lot in the last few years while she had her cubs. This year, at least in the last few days, we've seen her up here quite a bit, fishing near the fish ladder, a little bit on the lip, and really anywhere else she can fit in. It'll be interesting to see what happens if 480 decides to move over to that location, or if another bear comes in and decides to fish the falls, see what her reaction is, see kind of where she lands on the bear hierarchy here at the falls. Alright, so sorry for all the technical difficulties, everybody. It looks like now you can both hear and see me. To recap, we have 480 Otis fishing near the jacuzzi here, and 273 fishing on the other side of the river near the down log. And 273 is not a bear that we saw at the falls very often in the last few years as she was raising her cub. This year, at least in the last few weeks, she's been spending quite a bit of time fishing the falls, fishing some good locations here, kind of fitting in where she can, where other more dominant bears are leaving vacancies, both at the fish ladder here on the left, where she is now by the down log, and even a little bit up on the lip. So it'll be interesting to see how she reacts if another bear, like say 480 Otis here, decides to swing into her spot, or if another bear more dominant than her, or another bear that's equal dominance to her, decides to come fish the falls. See what her reaction is, kind of see where she lands in the bear hierarchy. And as I say that, another bear, same age as her, roughly, 151 Walker is walking upriver, and let's see kind of how she reacts here. The 151 is not a particularly dominant bear. He's also kind of fitting into the falls hierarchy where he can, fitting in and getting whatever fishing spot is available to him. And I've been referencing this bear hierarchy for a few moments now, and the reason it exists is so that bears don't just tear each other apart. If bears had to fight every time they were competing over a fishing location or competing over a mate, the bears wouldn't last very long. They wouldn't live very long. So what's developed is kind of a series of body language and communication that the bears use to determine, I want this spot, or I'm bigger than you, you've got to leave. And it looks like we're seeing some playing here. Could be courting behavior. Definitely not aggressive. I've noticed in the comments some people were wondering if I can zoom in on any of these bears. Unfortunately, with the setup I have now, I'm not able to zoom, so we'll just kind of have to enjoy the full picture as it is for tonight. And like I was mentioning earlier, both those bears, 151 and 273, very playful, very energetic. And it goes to show that bears are definitely individuals. They're definitely unique. Got their own kind of quote-unquote personalities. A lot of bears at this age don't play with other bears. These two, it seems like their energy and their choice to try to interact with other bears, their increased sociability, could be a benefit to them. They could be, honing those skills still as young adults, those motor skills, their strength, their coordination, in case they do need to kind of use those practice skills, swatting at each other, biting at each other. So all that play and all that practice could really come into use later in their lives. So as you can see, as 273 just caught her fish, and a 480 Otis has been catching fish all night, 151 as well. The fishing is really easy right now. I've seen a lot of people ask in the chat, why aren't we seeing more bears when there's so many fish? And the answer is kind of counterintuitive. Sometimes the more fish we see, the less bears we see, and that's because it doesn't take very long for these bears to kind of fill their bellies up with salmon. And even a bear can only eat so much. At a certain point, they have to go off and rest and sleep it off, just like we kind of sleep off our Thanksgiving meal. And so when the fishing's really good, when the fishing's easy, it doesn't take a whole lot of time to catch all the fish that they can eat, we don't see bears stack up at the falls quite as much. It's not that we're not seeing bears visit the falls, they're just not there quite as long. like I said, fishing is real easy right now. You can see the water all around these bears that's just swarming with sockeye salmon. The escapement number for the Neck River so far is at about 1.5 million. So 1.5 million sockeye salmon have escaped commercial fishing out in Bristol Bay and have swam up the Neck River into Neck Lake. And about 20% of those fish will eventually reach the Brooks River. So this is really quite a big year for the sockeye salmon in Bristol Bay and in Neck River particularly. Not necessarily yet a record year, but we still got a lot of time to go left in July. We've got a lot of summer days to go, so keep track of the escapement numbers on the Alaska Department of Fish and Game. And they keep those numbers up to date by about 2 days lag time. So I think you can currently check out escapement numbers up till 2 days ago, and they'll update them about every day. But it really is amazing to see these salmon that have come all the way out from the Pacific Ocean, past commercial fishing, past subsistence fishing, sport fishing, past these bears in other areas of the park, and now they're trying to jump the Brooks Falls. And the reason that we see so many bears visit this area as opposed to maybe another normal creek somewhere else in the park is the falls act as a temporary barrier for the sockeye salmon. They all have to stop here and pause before they continue and try to jump up the falls. And that makes for some really good fishing conditions for the bears. A lot of the fish that we're seeing jump don't make it on the jump that we see. Based on some information compiled by former Katmai Ranger Michael Fitz, about a little less than 7% of the jumps are actually successful. That doesn't mean that 7% of the fish are successful in getting up the falls, because they'll keep on trying, they'll keep on jumping until they make it or until they die trying. So I'm about halfway through the broadcast here. Just in case anyone's kind of tuning in late, we're doing a play-by-play kind of ranger commentary. You can think of it like sports narration for brown bears. We're going to continue this for the next 30 minutes or so. If you're watching on Facebook, definitely check out explore.org. All the live bear cam action is brought to you by Explore. They're a non-profit organization. And they've got wilderness and animal cams from all over the world that you can see on their website. The bear cam is just one of them. And the bears we're seeing here, from closest to farthest, 480 Otis, one of our older, larger male bears. We just caught a salmon here. Next in line in the middle here is 151 Walker, a young adult male. And at the end, on the other side of the bank here, 273, a young adult female. She's raised 1 litter and is now, as of this year, emancipated that cub, so we think, as she returned without him, and has been spending quite a bit of time at the falls now that she's on her own, only has to look out for herself. And so if you have any questions, please feel free to enter them into the chat window beneath the video feed on explore.org. Unfortunately, I won't be able to answer questions on Facebook Live, but if you're on Facebook Live, you head over to explore.org and cue your questions into the chat box. I'll do my best to answer as many as I can. And I'd also welcome any viewers out there who have been watching for a number of years, or even who have some insight into some of the questions that are being asked. There's a great wealth of information among the bear cam community, so I'd encourage anyone to participate and answer questions as they see fit. And I've seen a few questions here about 480 Otis and some of his wounds. He does have a kind of a gash on his leg. He's got some open wounds on his forearms and chest, and that's pretty normal for large adult male brown bears. It may seem like he's showing up with maybe more than usual, more wounds than usual. There could be, any number of reasons for that. Maybe he's going after more females, trying to mate with more females this year for whatever reason. Maybe he's been a little bit more agitated. Bears do have kind of the same dental problems that humans do. They do get cavities. They do get abscessed teeth, and that can really affect their temperament. 480 Otis does have some dental problems. He's missing 2 of his teeth. 2 canine teeth, we believe, and the teeth that he has remaining are really, really worn down, just worn down to nubs. There are also, it seems, with the number of salmon that are at the falls here, and the amount of time that it takes bears to kind of fill their bellies, we're seeing less bears all at once here at the falls, just because there's so many salmon. It doesn't take them very long to fill up, and then they go off and rest. So bears aren't stacking up quite as much at the falls at this time. And because of that, a bear like 480 Otis, who's hanging out here really all day, he might have fewer bears to compete with, fewer bears that are more dominant than himself. And so he may be challenging other bears a little bit more, maybe claiming a higher spot in the bear hierarchy. And that could also result in some of those newer wounds. But all in all, it really is pretty normal to see large adult male brown bears show up with some wounds, especially in the beginning of the season when all the bears are kind of seeing each other for the first time again. They're kind of reestablishing that social hierarchy. And, we get a really, really great intimate view of these animals, of these wild animals, but there's a lot that goes on off screen. There's a lot that we don't know. And I've got another question here from Nellie Bell. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. How wide is the river at the falls here? I'm not, can't give you a super accurate estimate, but just from standing here, I would say it's about 35, maybe 40 yards from bank to bank. So the bears really are pretty close to one another right now. And, bears are pretty solitary animals, but they're also very opportunistic. So if they see an easy food source, they see some good fishing here at the falls, they're not going to let a couple other bears, chase them off. They're going to take advantage of that resource. So as the season goes on, they don't start out really wanting to be so close to each other, but as the fish keep coming and as the opportunity awaits, they'll jump in and take advantage. The bears have a pretty large personal space bubble. But if they need to shrink it down in order to help them survive, they certainly will. And we're seeing some more interesting interaction here between 151 and 273. Oftentimes, courting behavior simply is a male bear habituating a female bear to its presence. So getting her used to him being near her, and so that eventually she'll tolerate him mating with her. And 151 there looked like he was sniffing 273, maybe trying to detect whether she's an estrus, whether she's ready to mate, whether she's receptive. Brown bears are sexually mature between ages 4 and 6, though many female bears won't raise a litter successfully, even if they've been mated with, for a number of years after that. It takes a lot of experience and skill as a survivor out here in order to successfully raise cubs. And brown bears will also mate before they're sexually mature. Almost like they're practicing for later. Looks like here 151 was almost trying to mount there. 73 said not yet. And this is also another example of just how different brown bears can be. A lot of time courting is not sweet like this. It's not it's not cute and adorable. There can often be kind of a violent event. But these two mixing in some playing, mixing in some nuzzling, some really great courting behavior that we're seeing here. And as AK Guide here just brought up, brown bears are serial monogamous. So throughout the mating season, which spans from May through the end of July, though most of the mating activity takes place between May and early or mid-July, before salmon are real abundant like this, as bears are able to spend their time courting rather than kind of wasting time while there's food available, while they have it available to them and they can pack on the pounds. But bears are serial monogamous, so they'll mate with one mate at a time, but several throughout the season. And because bears are serial monogamists, it's possible for a litter with multiple cubs to have several sires, several fathers. One of the things that Katmai's biologists are currently researching is they're trying to nail down a family tree, so to speak. We know some of the relationships between cubs and mother bears, the maternal lines, but we don't know paternal lines because male brown bears play no part in the rearing of cubs. So Ranger Michael Saxton is currently working on field work to determine just that. He'll be darting bears with a biopsy dart, an air-powered rifle that shoots a biopsy needle, which once it hits the bear, it immediately falls out and can then be retrieved for a DNA sample. Also used in the study will be hair snares. Those are already in place throughout the park. They were set up late in June. Another piece of that study, another purpose, is to determine the relationship between the bears we see here in inland Katmai and Brooks Camp along the Brooks River. To see what the relationship they have to bears out on the coast. Determine, whether bears frequently travel in between. See how closely they're genetically related to one another. So the field work for that study started last year and will continue this year. The actual darting has not quite begun, but it could begin really any day. At this point in time, there have been, because of low water levels in Neck Lake, there have been a lot of bears and a lot of people down in the lower river. So not a great time to shoot a bear with a biopsy dart. Although it doesn't cause them a ton of discomfort or harm, certainly no long-term discomfort. It does surprise them, and sometimes they'll, take a quick charge, and it's a lot like being stung by a bee. If you don't know what's coming, it might startle you. You might take a few steps in agitation. We don't want that to happen when there are people around. So Michael Saxton is waiting for a more opportune time to start that part of the field work.
May I talk to you? Is that possible? Or not?
And earlier this morning, I was on doing another play-by-play. We counted 480 otis catching, I believe it was 14 fish. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong there. In the span of about an hour and a half. So he's an incredibly successful bear. And I'm going to point the camera down towards the bank of the river, and we can see just a real graveyard of salmon. I've heard a lot of people ask in the chat what that smells like, and it smells about like you'd expect, like a lot of dead, rotting salmon. The bears that we're seeing now are often high grading their catch, so they're eating the most fatty parts of the fish and kind of leaving the rest. There's a lot of different animals that will take advantage of that. Primarily other smaller bears, bear cubs, and subadult bears will come and capitalize on fish that they don't have to catch, that they don't have to work for. And although they're not getting the highest fat content, they are getting a very easy meal, lots of protein, still a good amount of fat, and they're not having to work for it. We've seen on the cams, particularly in the mornings, we've seen wolves visit the river, and they'll scavenge salmon as well. Lots of different birds, bald eagles, magpies, glaucous-winged gulls, Bonaparte gulls, mew gulls. They'll all scavenge as well. correction, 18 salmon in an hour and a half. And at one point last year, I believe we counted 44 in 8 hours. I say we, but I didn't do a whole lot of counting. That was on the part of our cam viewers, our bear cam community here. And it's really amazing what we can see here on the cams. I just like, I think every person has a story to tell. I think every wild animal has a story to tell as well, through their experiences, their behaviors. And it's very rare that we get a look into that with wild animals. Very difficult to follow and track them and get any meaningful observations of them. So it's real special, I think, that we were able to see that here on the bear cam. Again, brought to you by Explore.org. And so I'm going to be heading off for now. I hope you continue to enjoy and watch the bear cams here. It seems like there's a lot of action going down on the lower river. A lot of sows with cubs utilizing the low lake level. It's giving them some easier fishing access. So I hope that, as you continue to watch and enjoy the bear cams, that we're able to kind of step back and appreciate just how special it is to get a glimpse into the life of a wild animal, a truly wild animal, one that has millions of acres to live in, a pristine ecosystem, which is more and more becoming a rarity in the world. And not only to just get a glimpse at them, but to follow their lives and follow their experiences. I think there's a lot to learn and a lot to be inspired by from watching the lives of these brown bears. So enjoy, have a good night, and I'll talk to you all again soon.